Good day, this is Professor Will, CBMD, PhD. Today's Sunday, July 22nd, 2018. It is 17:47, 15 seconds p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Paired data. Data that occurs in ordered pairs. Pappus theorem. Theorem of Pappus. A method for finding the volume of a solid revolution. The volume equals the product of the area of the region being rotated times the distance traveled by the centroid of the region in one rotation. Parabola. A U-shaped curve with certain specific properties. Formally, a parabola is defined as follows. For a given point called the focus and a given line not through the focus called the directrix, a parabola is a locus of points such that the distance to the focus equals the distance to the directrix. Note, it is a common error to call any U-shaped curve a parabola. A parabola must satisfy the conditions listed above, and a parabola always has quadratic equation. Parallel lines, two distinct coplanar lines that do not intersect. Note, parallel lines have the same slope. Parallel planes, two distinct planes that do not intersect. Parallel postulate, the assumption that given a point P and a line M, not through P, there is exactly one line passing through P that is parallel to M. Parallel pipe and a polyhedron with 6 faces, all of which are parallelograms. Parallelogram, a quadrilateral with 2 pairs of parallel sides. Parameter algebra, the independent variable or variables in a set of parametric equations. Parametric equations, a system of equations with more than one dependent variable. Often parametric equations are used to represent the position of a moving point. Parameterized, to write in terms of parametric equations. Example, the line x plus y equals 2 can be parameterized as x equals 1 plus t, comma y equals 1 minus t. Parent functions, toolkit functions, a set of basic functions used as building blocks for more complicated functions. Parenthesis, the symbols and in brackets, singular, parenthesis. Partial derivative, a derivative of a function that has more than one independent variable. Partial derivatives are found by treating one independent variable as a variable and the rest as constants. Partial differential equation, a differential equation that contains at least one partial derivative. Partial fractions, a process of writing any proper rational expression as a sum of proper rational expressions. This method is used in integration as shown below. Note, improper rational expressions can also be rewritten using partial fractions. You must, however, use polynomial long division first before finding a partial fractions representation. Partial sum of a series, the sum of a finite number of terms of a series. Partition of an interval, a division of an interval into a finite number of subintervals. Specifically, the position itself is the set of endpoints of each of the subintervals. Partition of a positive integer, rewriting a positive integer as the sum of smaller positive integers. Partition of a set, a collection of a disjoint subsets of a given set. The union of the subsets must equal the entire original set. Pascal's triangle, a number which make up Pascal's triangle are called binomial coefficients. Pentagon, a polygon with 5 sides. Per annum, per year. For example, 5% per annum means 5% per year. Percentile, the PTH percentile of a set of data is the number such that the P% of the data is less than that number. For example, a student whose SAT score is in the 78th percentile has scored higher than 78% of the students taking the test. Note, the median is the 50th percentile. Perfect number, a number n for which the sum of all the positive integer factors of n which are less than n add up to n. For example, 6 and 28 are perfect numbers. The number 6 has factors 1 and 2 and 3. 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. The number 28 has factors 1, 2, 4, and 7 and 14. And 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 14 equals 28. Perfect square, any number that is the square of a rational number. For example, 0, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, etc. are all perfect squares. So are 1 over 25 and 9 over 4. Perimeter, the distance around the outside of the plane figure. For a polygon, the perimeter is the sum of the lengths of the sides. Period of a periodic function, a horizontal distance required for the graph of a periodic function to complete one cycle. Period of a periodic motion, the time needed to complete a cycle. For example, a pendulum exhibits a periodic motion. Its period is the time it takes for a pendulum to swing from one side to the other and then back again. Note, period is a reciprocal of frequency. Periodic function, a function which has a graph that repeats itself identically over and over as it is followed from left to right. Periodic motion, motion that repeats itself identically over and over, such as the swinging of a pendulum. If the motion can be modeled using sinusoid, It is called a simple harmonic motion. Periodicity identities. Trig identities showing the periodic behavior of the 6 trig functions. Permutation, a selection of objects in which the order of the objects matters. Permutation formula, formula for the number of possible permutations of k objects from a set of n. This is usually written sub n p sub k. Perpendicular bisected, line perpendicular to a segment passing through the segment's midpoint. Note, the perpendicular bisected to the sides of a triangle are concurrent, intersecting at the circumcenter. Phase shift, horizontal shift for a periodic function. Piecewise continuous function, a function made up of a finite number of continuous pieces. Piecewise continuous function may not have vertical asymptotes. In fact, the only possible types of discontinuities for a piecewise continuous function are removable and step discontinuities. Piecewise function, a function that uses different formulas for different parts of its domain. Pinching theorem, sandwich theorem, squeeze theorem. A theorem which allows the computation of a limit of an expression by trapping the expression between two other expressions which have limits that are easier to compute. Plane, a flat surface extending in all directions. Any 3 non-collinear points lie on one and only one plane. So do any 2 distinct intersecting lines. A plane is a 2-dimensional figure. Plane figure. A shape on a plane includes points, lines, polygons, polygon interiors, circles, discs, parabolas, ellipses, hyperbolas, etc. Formally, a plane figure is any set of points on a plane. Plane geometry, the study of points, lines, polygons, shapes, and regions on a plane. Plane geometry typically does not use Cartesian coordinates. Platonic solids, regular polyhedra, the solids which have faces that are all congruent regular polygons, and which has dihedral angles that are all congruent. There are only 5 possible shapes for a regular polyhedron: regular tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron. Point, the geometric figure formed at the intersection of 2 distinct lines. Point and division formula, the formula for the coordinates of a point which part of the way from one point to another. Note, the midpoint formula is a special case of the point, a division formula in which t equals 1/2. Point of symmetry, a special center point for certain kinds of symmetric figures or graphs. If a figure or graph can be rotated 180 degrees about a point P and end up looking identical to the original, then P is the point of symmetry. Argument of a complex number, polar angle of a complex number, the angle describing the direction of a complex number on the complex plane. The argument is measured in radians as an angle in standard position. Polar axis, the positive x-axis. Polar rectangular conversion formulas, rules for converting between polar coordinates and rectangular coordinates. Polar coordinates, a way to describe the location of a point on a plane. A point is a given coordinate r degree. R is the distance from the point to the origin. Degree is the angle measured counterclockwise from the polar axis to the segment connecting the point to the origin. Note, with polar coordinates, a given point has many possible representations. Degree has many possible values depending on which coterminal angle is chosen, and r can be positive or negative. Polar curves. Curves commonly written with polar equations include cardioids, lemniscates, lemnisons, rose curves, and spirals. Polar equation, an equation for a curve written in terms of the polar coordinate r and degree. Polar form of a complex number, the polar coordinates of a complex number on the complex plane. Polygon, a closed plane figure for which all sides are line segments. The name of a polygon describes the number of sides. A polygon which has all sides mutually congruent and all angles mutually congruent is called a regular polygon. 3 sides triangle, 4 sides quadrilateral, 5 sides pentagon, 6 sides hexagon, 7 sides heptagon, 8 sides octagon, 9 sides nonagon, 10 sides decagon, 11 sides undecagon, 12 sides dudecagon, and n-gon, octagon. Polygon interior, the points enclosed by a polygon. Polyhedron, a solid with no curved surfaces or edges. All faces are polygons and all edges are line segments. Polynomial, the sum or difference of terms which have variables raised to positive integer powers, and which have coefficients that may be real or complex. Polynomial long division, a method used to divide polynomials. Polynomial long division is essentially the same as long division for numbers. This method can be used to write an improper rational expression as a sum of a polynomial and a proper rational expression. Population, the entire set of cases or individuals under consideration in a statistical analysis. For example, a poll given to a sample of voters is designed to measure the preference of the population of all voters. Positive direction, a way of describing a scatter plot of positively associated data. Positive number, a real number greater than 0. 0 itself is not positive. Positive series, a series of terms that are all positive. Positively associated data, a relationship in paired data in which the two sets of data tend to increase together or decrease together. In a scatter plot, positively associated data tend to follow a pattern from the lower left to the upper right. Positively associated data have a positive correlation coefficient. Postulate, a statement accepted as true without proof. The postulate should be so simple and direct that it seems to be unquestionably true. Power, the result of raising a base to an exponent. For example, 8 is the power of 2, since 8 is 2 cubed. Power rule, a formula for finding the derivative of a power of a variable. Power series, a series which represents a function as a polynomial that goes on forever and has no highest power of x. Power series convergence, a theorem that states the three alternatives for a way a power series may converge. Precision, the level of detail in a number or estimate. A precise number has many significant digits. Note, an answer may be precise without being accurate. Accuracy, 3.14 is fairly accurate, approximation of pi. Precision, 3.199 is a more precise approximation, but it is less accurate. The image of a transformation, the original figure prior to a transformation. Prime factorization, writing an integer as product of powers of prime numbers. Prime number, a positive integer which has only one, and the number itself as factors. For example, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, etc. are all primes. By convention, the number 1 is not prime. Principal, in finance, the original amount of money invested, deposited, or loaned. Prism, a solid with parallel congruent bases, which are all both polygons. The bases must be oriented identically. The lateral faces of a prism are all parallelograms or rectangles. Probability, the likelihood of an occurrence of an event. The probability of event A is written PA. Probabilities are always numbers between 0 and 1 inclusive. Product, the result of multiplying a set of numbers or expressions. Product rule, a formula for the derivative of the product of two functions. Product is sum identities. Trig identities which show how to rewrite products of sines and or cosines as sums. Projectile motion, falling bodies. A formula used to model the vertical motion of an object that is dropped, thrown straight up, or thrown straight down. Prolate spheroid, a stretched sphere shaped like a watermelon. Formerly a prolate spheroid is a surface of revolution obtained by revolving an ellipse about its major axis. Proof by contradiction, indirect proof. Proving a conjecture by assuming that the conjecture is false. If this assumption leads to a contradiction, the original conjecture must have been true. The technique employs a logical method known as modus tollens. Proper fraction, a fraction with a smaller numerator than denominator. For example, 3/5 is a proper fraction. Proper rational expression, a rational expression in which the degree of the numerator polynomial is less than the degree of the denominator polynomial. Proper subset, a subset which is not the same as the original set itself. Proportional, two variables are proportional if their ratio is constant. Proportionality is written using the infinity symbol. Example, suppose that A infinity B. This means that A and B is constant, or that A equals KB where K is constant. Pyramid, a polyhedron with a polygonal base and lateral faces that taper to an apex. The pyramid with a triangular base is called a tetrahedron. Pythagorean identities, circle identities. Trig identities relating sine with cosine, tangent with secant, and cotangent with cosecant derived from the Pythagorean Theorem. Pythagorean Theorem, an equation relating the lengths of the sides of a right triangle. The sum of the squares of the legs of the right triangle is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. Pythagorean triple, a set of three positive integers which satisfies the Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared.